Hello, 8B Civic students. This is Mr. McGravy, your Civics in Action teacher. And this is episode 2 of Civics in Action with Mr. McGravy. This is a show that we're going to be doing all year, at first with Civic agents and actors and myself. And then I'm going to involve all of you, and you're going to be on the call and interviewing and doing some really cool things. So our guest today is someone who I think most of you know from the Youth Center, the director of the Youth Center and Youth Services, Mr. Rick Gorman. Rick actually came in last year to do a live Civic in Action talk and did this really amazing talk on the Youth Center, which you all enjoy as a civics project that Rick worked tirelessly on. And there's so many levels to it. And I think it's going to be a really cool thing for you all to see. So first of all, I just want to say, hello, Rick. How you doing?
How are you, Mr. McGravy and students? Good to see everybody. I am a huge fan of Mr. McGravy's civics class and program. I loved being on it last year. I think this is actually the action that I'm looking for, where you guys can really hear from people that have done some things and try to help you guys become real civic leaders, because I know you can do that. So thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so thrilled. I'm so thrilled. This is going to be a great show. So Rick, I always like to do a little icebreaker with people. So I'm going to have an icebreaker question. And the question is, what do you miss the most about the pre-pandemic times? Obviously, Friday the 13th, March 13th was the last day that we were in school. And of course, the youth center and things like that. So, what do you miss the most?
Well, I think personally and professionally. So we closed, when you guys closed on March 13th, that was actually our last day. The town manager called me and said, we got to be in line with the school department. So we closed on that Friday. So I look at it now and I'm like, it's been 6 months. And what I miss on a personal level, as a father, as a husband, as somebody that enjoys life, I miss that I can't do everything that I want to do. I miss the fact that I can't be out with people constantly. I don't really have a problem wearing a mask, but I like to be out. I like to go to restaurants. I like to go out into nature. I like to, go out where there's lots of people, like concerts and things like that. So I miss that I can't do any of that. And professionally, which may even be more upsetting for me, is the fact that we miss the kids. So we open up this coming Monday, and we had a phenomenal summer, and I know we're going to talk about that. But one thing we miss is we miss all of you kids that used to come here, 100 kids a day, Monday through Saturday, and all the great laughs we had and all the programs. And the reality is, when we reopen this week, it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more program-based, so it won't be that drop-in center. But we are just ecstatic that we're going to see you guys again. So, yeah, we miss you kids, and I kind of just miss having that normal life.
Oh, yeah, I'm so thrilled about everything and what you're going to do, and we'll talk more about what you did this summer. So a lot of the students just to see you as Rick at the youth center, they don't really necessarily maybe think of you as a civic actor or agent or participant. So just as an introduction to civics, and the kids are just starting to get into civics now, who are you and what role do you play in North Andover as a civic agent, actor, agent, participant? Just tell us a little bit about your job and how government and civics relates to it, because I know you've had a career here. You've been here a very, very long time. So you've seen so much in the town. So I'd just love to hear your role. I know the kids know it, but I think you could probably put a little civics perspective on it.
Yeah, I have a very unique role. So I've been here 32 years, kids. So that's like 18 years longer than you've been alive. So I've seen this town change. I've seen myself change in this period of time. And how I ended up here was out of some misfortune. And I have no problem telling kids of this. Like, I had every intention of being a lawyer. And for 2 years, I did not get into law school. So I had to be resilient. And at one point I just said, well, I really like working with kids. And that's kind of how I started. And I have never looked back. I don't regret not being a lawyer. I love my last 32 years. But my role was a one-man operation back in the day. And it was about working with just basically kids that were having real clear problems. I dealt with a lot of kids that had drug and alcohol problems, had a lot of kids that had a lot of mental health issues, and they wanted me to work with at-risk kids. And my personal opinion is all kids are at risk. So over the last 30 years, we've dealt with all types of kids. Obviously, I'm involved with a lot of things in this town, running the youth center, running all the sports fields, creating new fields for us. I run the Stevens Pond. I'm obviously extremely visible. I work very closely with the town government, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in terms of helping shape this community. My master's degree is in community social psychology. So community social psychology works obviously on the psychology piece, but its basic premise is how can we make our community better so that kids and adults can have a healthier experience. So I'm a little bit of everything. I wear 9,000 hats in this town, and sometimes I forget which hat I'm wearing on a given day. And today I'm your guest speaker at the amazing civics class. But that's kind of who I have been. And, you know, at this point, kids, I don't see myself leaving. I'm probably going to end up retiring here. And we've got some very unfinished business that I want to make sure I'm involved with to take care of before I do kind of ride off into that sunset.
That's great, Rick. Well, you said back in the day, and I really wanted to give the kids a history lesson in the history not only of civics, but the history of North Andover. And, you know, they only know the youth center, which is one of the most amazing places for youth centers. I live in Melrose, and I got to tell you, we would kill to have something even close to what you have. And I think last year when you came in live to talk to the kids, I don't think they realized not only how lucky they were, but the journey that you took. So what I want to do is I'm going to present right now. I'm just going to present some pictures for the students that we're going to be able to see. And I'm going to try that again. I think that one, I'm going to stop and I'm going to try the tab. Sorry about that, guys. We're all figuring out technology together. All right, beautiful. Okay, I'm just going to scroll down. And here we go. So obviously I could not get a picture of the actual red barn. I just got a picture of a red barn, but basically it was a red barn, and we'll talk more about it later. What Rick told us last year, and this was always folklore when I was a kid growing up, but Rick actually confirmed it. There were concerts at the Red Barn. In fact, a band that I think a lot of you have heard of called Aerosmith played a concert at this show in the 1970s. And if I continue, I know you guys know the wonderful gym and the wonderful playrooms. I want you to take a look at the playroom that the kids had in the 70s and 80s up until the early 90s. It looks a lot different than what you experience today. I mean, look at that. I mean, that's just, oh, it's just what an amazing, amazing place. So I think, you know, that's a really cool history lesson. And since it is a history lesson, I think it's important for Rick to kind of take us on this civic journey that he went through. And he told us last year, and it really blew kids' minds. They really had no idea. So Rick, take us through the late 80s into the early 90s. Just, you know, take us through all the people that were involved in the process. I know it's called the Joseph Herman Youth Center. I think a lot of the students do not know who he was. He plays a huge role in this journey. Please tell us your civic story, because I think it's a great one.
Well, if you notice, Mr. McGravy is wearing my classic Led Zeppelin shirt.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about that. Aerosmith, that is the truth. So Steve Tyler and the crew actually did play in the Red Barn. We have pictures of it in 1968, 1969, when they were literally just starting out.
Wow.
And they actually were the most famous band. But obviously, when I was here, we used to do barn concerts. So For you guys, you've known this youth center your entire life. Whether you've come here or not, you've driven by it, you've come to summer fun, or you've come to the playground, you've seen this building. Because that building that you recognize has been here for 20 years. So this past July, we were supposed to have a magnificent 20-year celebration, but obviously COVID-19, we couldn't do that. And hopefully we'll be able to do it maybe next year. But that building, which you guys all know, with the gymnasium, and the white building that has all of our rooms and the weight room and the game room, etc. That is modeled after what was literally on that site. And Mr. McGravy showed you a picture of the indoors of this old red barn. But on the site that we live right now there used to be a very small red barn, which had mice infested. It was probably something that would be shut down by the health department these days. But that was kind of our operation. And then there was a white farmhouse next to us that we had our offices on the second floor. And obviously, when we built this building, we wanted to model after what was there. So believe it or not, what you see right now is kind of a modern version of what was there for 100 years before that. So I started here in 1988, kids, and as I said, did a lot of working with extremely high-risk kids, and we started to start more programs. One of our first programs was Teen Code dances, which we still have to this day, which many of you have come to 6th grade dances and 7th and 8th grade dance and the 8th grade dress-up dance. Those are one of the first programs we started. But after 5 years, we were bursting at the seams. We were running all of our programs out of, believe it or not, 18 different facilities in town. We used the library. We used the Grogan's Park Hut. We used all of the school buildings. We used the Unitarian Church, the Kachikowit Lodge, all these different buildings. And we said, it would be nice if we could build a home for this. So what we did is from 1993 to when we actually opened in 2000, we embarked on a very big fundraising plan to raise money for the town, so that for the youth center. And the town basically said, we'll give you X amount of dollars, but you're going to have to figure out how to raise the rest of it. So this building these days would probably cost $10 million. Back then it was $2.5 million. The town gave us $975,000 and then said, Rick, you and your staff, your kids, got to go out and raise the other little over $1 million. So we spent 7 years raising money. But what people don't know is in 1993, when we were first starting, we went to the town to try to get some money, and we ended up getting that $975. But it actually took us a couple of years and a couple of rejections. We had to go to town meeting, try to get funding, and it got rejected twice. And I have amazing pictures in our archives of the kids, and this is what I want to stress to the kids here today. It was the kids that helped build this building. So Rick's obviously the face of it, and he was the visionary, but we put kids together, and all, you know what, kids, it was middle school kids. It was more middle school than high school kids, because high school kids were like, well, we're going to be out of here before it happens. So middle school kids got very involved with it, and it was very exciting after 2 rejections that we actually got that $975. And I'll never forget it, the old North Andover High School, all the middle school kids jumping up and down and actually feeling like they had done something. And they did. This wasn't Rick Gorman. This was you guys. This was kids your age. And by the way, those kids now, they're in their mid-30s to late 30s. But the reality is they were actually able to pull that off. And then once we got that initial money, then there was almost like a firestorm of the kids wanting to do more. We'll run everything from bake sales to auctions to, we used to have celebrity softball games, and we had a celebrity hockey game, and we had a horseback mules basketball game. We did all these creative stuff, but it was, the key thing was parents were involved, but it was driven by the kids. And then the final thing was in 1999, they crushed that old dilapidated building, and they started a year process of building it. And I actually lived in Drummond Park in a trailer for 1 year while we opened the building. And then since 2000, you've had this illustrious building that for most of you who are 13, 14, 15 years old, you've always known that building. But to the kids who are now in their mid to late 30s, they still come by here and say, we did that. We got it done.
That is an amazing story. And students, one thing that we're going to talk about this year is civics is not for 18-year-olds and older. It's for all people. And we're going to be exposed to all of these kids your age and younger than you that are going to do amazing things. And why did those kids, they had an issue, they had a concern, and they got involved, and they went to meetings, and they found an ally in Rick and other people. So that's a really important thing to talk about. And Rick, just for trivia for the kids, thanks for the arrows, but that's so cool. Just talk a little bit about State Representative Joseph Herman, who the youth center is named after.
Yeah, so a reality being is we needed to come up with a name for it, right? So it wasn't going to be named the Pat McGravy or the Rick Gorman Youth Center. They wanted to name it after someone that had a history with helping kids. And if you go around town, your football stadium, the Joe Walsh football stadium, is named after an amazing individual, Joe Walsh, who did so much for kids. And if you go around town, there's other areas. We looked at, who were some people that were instrumental in getting funding for the town for the kids. And at that point was an older gentleman who had just passed on, and his name was Joseph N. Herman, lived in North Andover. He was a state representative, I want to say, for like 20 years. And he did a lot for this community, and he did a lot for his kids, for the kids. So the committee decided that that's who they wanted to name the building after, and the town approved it. And because of that, the State House found out about it, and he had a lot of friends in the State House. And present school committee member David Teresi was a young representative at that time. And David Teresi was very instrumental in helping us get the last $300,000 from the state to finish off the building. So his name will always be the Herman Youth Center. I know people call it the YC in the North Andover Youth Center, but it is officially known as the Joseph N. Herman Youth Center. So if you ever see David Teresi around, who's one of our school committee people, give him a thanks too, because he carried on the legacy of Joe Herman.
That's so great. And students, these civic agents, these civic actors that Rick is referencing, you're going to meet them. You're going to meet them this year. So State Representative Minicucci, State Representative Trom Wynn, Senator Andy Vargas, Senator Bruce Tarr, Town Moderator Mark DeSalvo of Town Meeting. These are all people that you're going to meet, and you're going to realize that they're people just like you and I. There's nothing special about them, and they really want you to be civically engaged. And the whole point of this project, this pilot, and this program, as Rick said at the beginning, is we really want you to be civically engaged and play a role in your community, which is huge. So that's a good segue into the last thing that I'm going to share on the screen. And that is, and I did show this to Rick last year, and I showed it to him again. Obviously the pilot that we're doing is a program that I connected with 2 years ago from Harvard University called the Democratic Knowledge Project. And if you remember Allison Dieterman and Caitlin Parks talking about their civics action projects, there were 10 questions of how to be a change maker. Obviously, Rick and this project with the students, they're change makers, because if you saw the tremendous change that Rick was part of. So these are 10 questions that you're all going to be using in class when we look at small things. And then at the end of the year, when you do a civic action project, these are questions that you're going to be exposed to. So obviously, I think Rick has already answered the majority of these questions, which is great, but why does it matter to me? Well, Rick and those kids clearly told you why. How much should I share? How do I make it more than myself? So clearly, this isn't something Rick, it's not the Rick Gorman show. It's not Rick wanted to do this. It was more than Rick, just like those kids. Where do we start? Well, Rick told you how they started. How can you make it easy and engaging for others to join? How do you get wisdom from crowds? Obviously, there's some downside. Obviously, you're putting yourself out there. Are you pursuing voice, influence, or both? Well, I think it was a lot more than voice in this circumstance. And how do we get from voice to change? And the last one, as I say, is how do we find allies? Civic allies. A civic ally is a friend. Rick talked a lot about so many allies. So, Rick, I gave you an opportunity to look at those questions last year and obviously this year. So, just what two questions on that list do you think were the ones that, you didn't have this list then, but what two questions do you think would be the ones that would guide you the most? Which two do you see as the most important?
Yeah, and you took it through basically that we've done all of them, but in preparation for today's class, kids, I actually went with 9 and 10.
Cool.
And actually, Mr. McGravy just mentioned the ally one, which I want to talk. But let me start with number 9. How do we get from voice to change? And I think what I've proven and what our kids have proven over the years is it's all well and good to have a voice, okay? But I always tend to see kids with a negative voice. And the negative voice is, we can't do this, or adults won't let us do this, or it's never going to happen, or we're never going to make it, and things like that. And my issue that I have with kids is you need to have a voice and a respected voice. Now, Mr. McGravy just mentioned a number of politicians that are going to be meeting with you. I'll take Christina Minicucci, for example. And I worked a lot with her and Diana DiZoglio, our past state senator, on that. And one of the things is they respect kids' voices. So you have to have the attitude that I might be 14 years old, but people are going to listen to me. I remember when I was first hired, guys. I was hired and I had in front of 5 adults that asked me, in my opinion, meaningless questions. Then there were 3 kids, 2 middle school, 1 high school, that asked me the best questions in the world. And the reality was the most important people in my interview was the kids, because in this case, I wanted to be working with the kids. I wanted to hear what they had to say. And they were blown away that a guy that's going to have this job actually cared what they thought. And the key then is, how do you take your voice in a positive way and move to change? And the reality is, it's a fight. You got to keep, and we're going to go into number 10, which helps you with this. But the reality is, value adults. I tell adults all the time, value what kids have to say. Sometimes you guys come up with the craziest ideas, which we have to probably eliminate. But my thing is, come up with every idea and we'll see what we can do. Once you feel respected, your voice can be changed. Let me just tell you something. We built a youth center because your voice forced change. And I know we're going to talk later what happened this summer. But this summer happened because of a kid-driven initiative, and I'm going to love to talk about this shortly. But that voice that the kids had this summer is the reason why we had a successful summer. So definitely your voice can go to change by being confident, pushing yourself to be heard, obviously respectfully. And I say this all the time. If I was the principal like George at the middle school, I would welcome kids coming in to, ask me questions, or maybe we should take a look at this. And I'm telling you right now, knowing George, your principal, I'm sure he would love to sit down with you and talk about things. And at the end of the day, sometimes some things can happen, some things can't. So you need to not just make it a voice, you need to then take the voice and push the change. And in this day, and a lot of kids have heard me say this, I don't love where we are as a country right now, but I have faith, and I've said this a million times, my faith is not my generation or not Mr. McGravy's generation. It's your generation that's going to change by having that voice. The second one is, how can we find allies? That is the most important thing. I always find myself, and I even did this as a kid, I want to be around truth tellers. I want people that are not going to just say, that a boy, that's good, and appease you and not really want to help you. As a kid, I wanted this, and as an adult, I want this. I want people to tell me, you may not be able to do this. Or if you want to do this, you might want to take a look at this. I don't want people just saying, you can do this, because at the end of the day, you might not be able to do it. So you need truth tellers. The second thing is, experts. Like in my opinion with you guys are experts in a lot of things. Let's face it, you're more experts right now on what kids really need than Mr. McGravy and myself. And you need to surround yourself with kids and allies that can help you with that, along with adults, people that actually see things the same way. And that's what we pulled off this summer, was surrounding ourselves with allies. And you get allies by being real, by being true, okay, by being honest and being trustworthy. People will want to jump around you. I'm so impressed with how many middle school and high school kids come to me with an idea, and they're expecting me to close the door, and I listen. And I'll be honest with you, I don't approve everything, but I do take it into consideration. But here's the thing, I will never do it for them. They're going to do it. So they might get my backing, they might get my support, but you're going to literally have to do the work for it. So find allies, grow your numbers. The numbers become support. Then you become an alliance, like we did when we built the youth center, that we were too powerful for them to turn us down. And you guys can be that powerful.
That's great. And students, I just want to point out that, Rick and I, we get along really well, but I think one of the reasons why we get along so well is we believe in kids. And, Rick has a podcast, and I was lucky enough to be a guest on it. And him and I, one of the things we talked about is people saying, oh, kids of this generation. Rick and I don't buy that. Rick and I do not buy that. We believe that you all have value and you all can offer something, and that's what civics is about. And I know sometimes it's hard to think about that, but it's really, really important to know. And how Rick talked about how you go about expressing yourself, being respectful, not just the way that you project yourself is very, very important. And that's something that we all need to learn. And I didn't have this when I was in 8th grade. I mean, I didn't know who my state rep was. I didn't know who my state senator was. So this is a huge opportunity for all of you. So we're getting close to the end of time, but I really thought it would be great on the first day of school. We had a professional development session, and Superintendent Dr. Gilligan, he recognized that a lot of the teachers like you were apprehensive and nervous about coming back. I mean, I've talked about this with you in our Google Meets. But I thought it would be great if Rick could kind of talk to you a little bit about the pandemic and going to school in the pandemic and masks and all these other things, because Rick was one of the few youth programs this summer that actually had a program. And I drove by once when I was running errands for my mom, and I just could not believe what I saw. It was not only weird to see this program going on during a pandemic, but then I saw how socially distant everyone was, how organized it was. And I'm talking the high school staff, some of my former students, and Rick. So Rick, just to kind of put people's mind at ease, obviously some reassurance to the kids going back would be greatly appreciated. But now tell us about the success of summer fun and what went into it. And obviously it was hugely successful. I think it's important, whether the kids were involved in it or not. I think that's a great place to end, because it's very hopeful.
Yeah, let me. I'm very proud of what we've done. I'll start off by saying, in all my years, kids, building this youth center and all the things I've done, what we did this summer is the greatest thing that I was ever part of, and I'm proud of everybody involved. Real quickly, in the springtime, everybody said we're not going to have summer programs because of the pandemic. I, along with a group of 15 high school and college kids, would not take no for an answer. So we spent about 3 months, and this was a great civic project for these kids, all residents of town, former students of Mr. McGravy, and we sat down and said, how can we do this and how we're going to do it safely? And my number one reason of why we had to do this was the social and emotional aspect. I was worried about you kids. You're cooped up in your house, the unknown of the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. And then once we proved that we needed to do this, we had to figure out how we we're going to do it. And we did amazing amount of work in terms of the health and safety. The bottom line is we had 8 weeks of summer programs, 819 kids. Many of them were some of you that came to our Girl Gut Game middle school program, as well as our Sports and Rec Boys program up at Reynolds Playground. So 819 kids, zero COVID-19 issues.
Wow.
Why?
Wow.
And the why is that we had a very good, safe plan. We followed the guidelines to a T. Now, you remember, back in the summer, the school didn't know if kids could wear masks in the fall time. I actually was a test for the school department, and you guys were amazing as kids. My staff was amazing to follow the guidelines. And as you guys are branching into the school now, I know that even myself and Mr. McGravy probably have a different opinion on this. And I know most people aren't ready to probably come to my side of this yet, but I would like to get to some middle ground. I believe we can get back to in-class learning at some point in time. It's not happening now, but at some point in time, I'd like to continue for us to work for that, because that's who I am as a change agent. But the reason I'm confident about that is the success that we had in the summer. And it wasn't just outdoors, it was indoors, et cetera, et cetera. So my take is, if we follow the guidelines to the T and we follow all the plan, the school department, we can have a good school year. Now remember, this school year is not going to be like any other school year. I get it, okay? And I know it's not fun, kids. And I know it's frustrating, but we are resilient. We're in this together. We can do this. So what have we done? I think during the summertime, kids proved that they can do this. I've actually joked with a number of educators that I actually think it's the kids that can actually help the teachers. And I'm imploring my kids, my middle school kids, a lot of your teachers are scared. A lot of your teachers are not sure, everything from the building to how to do this, the virus. I get all that. But many of you have dealt with this by just being in our summer programs, that I need you to be sympathetic to your teachers. I need you guys to work together on this, because the ultimate goal for all of us, Mr. McGravy, myself, and all of you, we want to get back in. We love working with kids. We want to be in person. I'm sick of Zoom meetings. I know you guys are too. But for the meantime, this is how we have to do it, and we need to work with it. So one of the things I'd like you to take from my summer is, we were put in a really tough situation of, can we do something? And we did it. And we did it because kids did it. High school kids, college kids that helped run it. But the elementary school kids and the middle school kids like you're the reason it was successful, because you followed the guidelines, because you wanted this, you made it happen. So these are the things I'm going to challenge in you. Mr. McGravy and I never lived through a global pandemic when we were your age, okay? And I'm sorry that you are, but the reality is, you're going to be better for this. You're going to be stronger for this. You're going to be more resilient for this. And we're going to figure this out, kids. We are definitely going to figure this out. So I'm asking you, as you head back to school, I understand your fears, your anxiety about stuff, but keep working at it. We're going to get through this.
Thank you, Rick. So just a quick thing, because we're getting close to the end. So Rick, I obviously have started my Google Meets with kids, and I'm talking about the Civics program, and we're doing identity and values at the beginning. And I got, it's the same thing that happened last fall. I got kids looking at me like, what the heck is this? What's going on? You were actually fortunate enough to come in as a speaker. You also saw other speakers, and you got to see the kids. You got to see my now ninth graders, my 8th grade civic students. What were your, what were your impressions of what the students thought of it? And, please be honest, what were your impressions just being an observer, in addition to a speaker, but just an observer of what was going on?
Yeah, I wanted to finish with this. So this is a good that you're asking me this. Kids, I need you to understand what I'm saying here. What Mr. McGravy has been the architect of, and what he has pulled off, is one of the finest things that I've seen an education institution do it in my 32 years. And remember, I've been here 32 years. What do I love about it? I love, and again, it would be better if we were in person right now, but I love the connection of actually not you just reading out of a textbook or someone telling you a story, but the engagement of adults and kids in trying to empower you guys to be change agents. And I'm a big believer in change agents. I've always said that. When I sat there last year, I remember coming back to the youth center and talking to Demi and everybody, and I said, that might have been one of my most fun things that I've done. And you got to remember, I'm asked to speak on podcast, on TV, on a lot of different things when it comes to kids. What I got out of there was I got kids that asked real questions. I love the attention. I didn't know if I was going to make you guys fall asleep or anything like that. But you guys were intelligent. You had unbelievable questions. And you know what? You grilled me. You didn't let me off the hook on some things. You wanted to know. You point blank kid last year wanted to know why I didn't get into law school and put me on the spot on that because on that resilience story. So I need you to know how lucky you are to have this teacher, first of all, and this program, because this is going to inspire some of you to be immediate change agents, but more so when you get off to college and when you get your young adult life. And when you see those speakers, and I'm sure Mr. McGravy is going to have wonderful people, give them the full attention and learn from them and ask questions and just become a complete knowledge hound to basically become the change agent. Because you know what? As I said a few minutes ago, we need you in this country. I need you in North Andover to be change agents.
Great. Well, students, we went a little over, but I think this talk is going to give you what you need. Not only is it going to tell you about civics, but I think it's going to give you inspiration, and it's really, really going to, we're just kicking things off so strongly. And so, Rick, I just want to say thank you so much for being a guest early, and I just think it's great, and I appreciate you supporting the program, and I just want to say thank you so much for being involved in this Civics in Action talk.
My pleasure. Best of luck to you, and even more so, best of luck to all you kids, and hope to see you at the youth center sooner than later.
Great. Okay, so episode 2 is in the can. We are done. Students, you're gonna love this video. You're gonna do some reflection, and there'll be a nice product that you will be creating to your youth center. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next episode.